Hey everyone, welcome to another recording session for the Polite Society podcast powered by the Second Amendment Foundation. This is one we're recording on January the 30th, 2013. Of course, I again am Paul Lathrop. Joining me today is, let me put that one up instead, is going to be John Richardson. Of course, John is the Only Guns and Money blog, and Amy Dillon returning after quite an absence from the show, but Amy is back and joining us. I am really pleased to have her back. And in just a few minutes, as soon as he logs on, we'll have Rob Pincus joining us tonight for the interview. I'm going to kind of delay just a little bit the start of the recording until we either have him on or we don't. So let me see. I'm looking at messages here, see if he's... Okay, Rob apparently is logging on now, he says. So, as we get started, I want to remind everybody that we are live on, of course, a lot of different platforms. If you're watching us on Polite Society Podcast YouTube feed or Facebook page, and not in a group, the Facebook group, you can comment by just commenting directly on that video. If you're anywhere else, if you're in a Facebook group, if you're watching us on OpsLens, if you're watching us on Rumble or anywhere else, on Getter, a lot of the places we show up, go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag PSPodcast. We'll get those comments just as quickly. We'll get them on the air. We'll discuss them. So I don't see Rob on yet. So and let me check one more thing, and I don't see it. So there we go. I show Rob is in the login process right now through my software. So there he is. All right, Rob, we are just getting set up here. Could we check your audio? Can you say something for me?
How's this sound? Sorry, I was almost late.
No, you're cool. Everything's good.
Cool. Awesome.
We're going to get kicked off here, and your interview segment will be right after our personal news segment, so just 5 minutes and we'll be into it with you, bud.
Deal.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
So, okay, now that I've got that out of the way, let me do this and we'll get started in okay, here we go. Masad Ayub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, January the 30th, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm John Richardson. And on tonight's show, we speak with Rob Pincus about a new handgun, and we also talk about Florida teasing permitless carry.
I'm Amy Dillon, and we will talk about Connecticut senators pushing for a new assault weapons ban. Also, in one of our DGUs, a boyfriend saves a woman from a late-night attack outside a bar. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 649 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. Hey, and welcome back. Rob can't be here tonight. Amanda and Charlie are out, so it is John, Amy, and I tonight. I'm going to start with you, John. What's been up since the last time you were on Polite Society, bud?
Well, I went to the SHOT Show, and I'm sorry I missed last week's show, because that was a great interview with Larry Correa. As it happened, I left the SHOT Show with some great memories and the SHOT Show crud. So if I cough tonight on the show, please excuse me. It was great to see everyone at SHOT, including Amanda, Charlie, Amy, and I think that's it from Polite Society. But I did see Amy, and I'll pass it on to her.
All right, Amy.
Well, it has been a while since I have been on air, but it's always great to be back with my co-hosts here with you, John and Paul, as well as all our PSP listeners. Like John mentioned, I also saw him at SHOT Show a couple of weeks ago, and a ton of other people from the show. I know Amanda, Charlie, Robin was there. And lately I've just been working, traveling, and spending time with my family as usual. I'm actually going to be in Arizona next month at the Arizona Celebrate the 2A rally on February 18th at the state capitol. So if you're in the Arizona area, come. I'd like to see everyone there.
I would absolutely love to be at that. And unfortunately, I didn't find out the date for that until I had already booked my flight to the U.S. Virgin Islands for the next day. So I cannot make it this year to the Arizona rally, but I promised Cheryl Todd, and I had to actually take a blood oath that I would make it next year. So I'm going to miss it this year, but I wish I could make it. And it's darn near that level for SHOT Show next year. I really missed seeing everybody going down, having a great time, and here I am stuck in the frozen north. So not much going on with me, just doing my regular broadcast duties here, trying to keep up with everything, and do my broadcasts, let everybody know what's going on, and getting ready for that trip to the Virgin Islands here in a couple weeks is kind of what's been up with me and Susan. So I think we're going to go ahead. We're going to get ready to go to our first break, and we're going to come on back the other side to talk to Rob Pincus. Before we do that, I do need to let everybody know we are part of the Self-Defense Radio Network. The tagline, of course, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. As those of you who are watching us live can see, we are there, as well as Rob Morris's Self-Defense Gun Stories. Amanda's Eye on the Target Radio is there. Armed Lutheran Radio is there. A lot of great pro-freedom podcasts. You can listen right on the website, and the subscription information is there. If you find something you like and you'd like to get all the time, you can get the subscription information to subscribe to the shows right there as well. Do please go check it out at sdrn.us. For right now, I'm going to say hang on for about a minute and a half. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Rob Pincus about the new PD-10 pistol. We'll be right back with that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, and we are back. This is our interview segment. Joining us today, Rob Pincus with Avidity Arms. And of course, you know Rob as Personal Defense Network. Rob, thank you for agreeing to be interviewed today, man. I am excited to talk to you about the new PDN pistol. It's out now, right?
Well, I'm carrying it right now. This one isn't out. We've got some guns out there with the media. John shot them. A lot of people at SHOT Show got to hold on to them. The there's a calendar over there you're not supposed to see, and if I don't know if the resolution was good enough, you might see a certain date circle. First shipment's going out in February. So we're within a handful of weeks of the first shipment going out for retail. It's exciting times here. For those who don't know, I put it out on my social media. I am sitting in my office at Avidity Arms headquarters here in Fletcher, North Carolina. Except for a couple of springs, all of the metal parts are now being made out there on that factory floor. Still doing some 3D printing, but I'm not 3D printing the PD-10 pistols. Those are being manufactured the traditional way with injection molding on the polymer frame, and all the metal stuff's being done out there. And it's a great team we've got here. It's been an incredible year. We moved the company here in February of last year, and being at SHOT Show in the Davidson's booth taking orders was an exciting time. You guys know that this has been going on for a while, and John actually was the one who let the cat out of the bag. He's local. I don't know, I think you're within about 10 minutes of where I'm sitting right now, and John spent some time here last fall, and he was actually the one who wrote the article that released the information that we were going to be at SHOT Show on his blog. So that was kind of cool to get John to do that.
Very, very cool. And I need to, how do I put this? And this is going to be a little bit of a touchy subject, and I'm sorry we have to bring it up, but I really wouldn't be doing my job if we didn't. There was a Fox News story that had an interview with you, and then the internet kind of blew up. But Rob, I know you. Excuse me. I've known you for quite a while. And I find it hard to believe what that Fox News story said. You said that you really said it, and basically what Fox News is trying to say is that Rob Pincus agrees with Joe Biden, and I cannot believe that's true. You want to talk about that for a few seconds?
Yeah, I will. I thought you were just going to say you didn't want to have to talk about how long it took me to get the PD-10 to market. But that's maybe harder to talk about. The Fox News thing is easy, especially since Fox News Digital did update the article. What they did was they published a partial quote. So if, I don't know, there may be 5 things. I mean, maybe Joe Biden likes a steakhouse in D.C. that I also like. That might be one of the things. I don't know. Most things I don't agree with him on, obviously, especially when it comes to guns. But one of the things I've actually said for years in classes is, I'm not teaching you for a psychological stop, right? When I'm teaching you to use a gun to be better prepared to defend yourself or others when you need to, I'm teaching you for a physical stop, for the attacker that's not going to run away because you fire your gun and miss. But we know, if you go to somebody like if you look at Tom Givens, right, the lessons from the street, I quote those lessons from the street a lot. He's got a great database about people using guns to defend themselves in Memphis and actually firing shots. Well, even if we go to just the times people use handguns and fire their guns, most of the stops are not physiological. It's not the bad guy, drops right there and can't try to hurt you anymore. The bad guy usually runs away. Even if he has bullets in him and we find him dead an hour later, or he goes into the hospital and needs surgery 30 minutes later, most bad guys change their mind when the shots start getting fired, and that's true for law enforcement or civilian home defense outside of the home use of guns. So one of the things I've said for many, many years is, look, Joe Biden, when he says you should stick a shotgun out the window and fire a shot in the air and it's probably going to scare the bad guy away, that's probably true. We know that probably is going to be the psychological effect when a bad guy thinks the house is empty or when there's unarmed victims inside and they hear a shot go off, they're probably going to run away. That doesn't make it okay to fire bullets into the air. It doesn't mean it's okay to use your gun as a signaling device. I don't even think you should be pulling your shirt up and say, we weren't on YouTube, I could do it, and say, here's a gun, you better change your mind, buddy, right? I don't think that's the way you use a gun. It's not a tool of intimidation. It's not a signaling device. It's something you use when you need to use lethal force to defend yourself or others. And maybe there's a warning in there verbally. Maybe there's a warning from bringing the gun out of the holster in your hand or putting your hand on the grip while it's in the holster, staging the gun, we call it. But there's not a warning shot. And there's certainly not shoot the guy in the leg because he only has a knife. So what Fox News did in that interview, if you can imagine, I just gave that 5-minute answer to a 12-second question. They only took the first sentence. They said, well, Joe Biden's probably right. If you fire a shot in the air, the bad guy's probably going to run away. And as if that was the complete thought. Unfortunately, some people, read that and decided rather than use the 12 seconds to use a search engine and see what does Rob think about warning shots, and see the videos and articles and 20 plus year history I've got of saying this is a horrible idea, don't do this. At least one person ran to the internet and couldn't wait to write an article about how Rob Pincus agrees with Joe Biden. And as the internet does, it spun it up. Thankfully, Dan Zimmerman over at Truth About Guns, he saw that article and he refused to publish it at that blog. And he came to me and said, man, what's going on? This can't be right. Same as you did. And I said, well, okay, yeah, the first half of that thought, or the first 10% of that thought is there's a basis in understanding why someone would look at defensive gun uses and say, well, you don't always have to kill a guy. But that becomes semantics. I'm not trying to kill a guy. I'm using lethal force to defend myself or someone else I care about when I think it's appropriate. If the guy dies, that's unfortunate, but it's based on his actions. My actions were defensive. And I'm not going to use my gun as a signaling device. And, Dan got it right, and people can go over to Truth About Guns and read that. And like I said, Fox did update the article, which would make one think that maybe the article that got it wrong would be retracted or updated. But as of now, it's been I guess it's been almost a week, and it hasn't been. But that's how the internet works. And guess what? There's some things on the internet that aren't correct. Rob Pincus, yeah, might be one of those things. So yeah, yes. But I appreciate you letting me bring it up honestly, because I'm sure there are people in the audience who might have seen that last week and not seen the correction and wonder why we aren't talking about it. And it's not a cover up. It's just I wish we never had to talk about it. Yeah,
and I don't want to spend the whole show. Whole time we have talking about it, because we do want to talk about the BD10. But Amy, I think you have something up in show notes you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, well, I actually did want to ask Rob about how long it did take for you to get the PD10 to market, because I remember when you announced it, and so I'm curious to hear just kind of the journey it's been since then. But I also just not to beat a dead topic, I also do want to mention with being taken out of context. As a defense instructor, we teach that you use a firearm if needed when there is a loss of life or serious bodily harm presented to you, and the moment that's when you either stop shooting or you don't shoot. And I think that people miss that part, and there's too much discussion of, well, do you shoot someone in the leg as to warn them or to not harm them? And it's really getting into the weeds. But I do agree with Rob. I saw the commentary about that, and it's funny if you sit down and talk to Rob, what kind of instructor he is, and I kind of just want to come to your defense on it.
I do appreciate it. Yeah, I tend to give those 5-minute answers. I think these things are nuanced. I think the explanations for why are incredibly important. I mean, it would have been easy for me to be like, I'm sure 50 other people that writer talked to that day from the gun world that said, Joe Biden doesn't know what he's talking about guns. And that may be true, but guess what? If you don't know that, if you're the person who doesn't know anything about guns either, and it makes logical sense to you that, you read stories in the paper all the time about somebody being shot at and running away. So maybe you do think, well, that makes sense. And I have to show up and say, well, I get why it makes sense to you, but here's why we would never do that with a lethal tool. And unfortunately, that writer left that really important nuance out. But I think it is important sometimes. I take risks. I know that. I've been told this over and over and over again. Rob, if you just give a simple answer, they can't misquote you, or they can't partially quote. In this case, it was a partial quote. And I get that, but I'm also not being an educator if I just throw out rhetoric. So I'll take the hit and we'll move on. And obviously, you guys know what I intended to say. Anyone who's trained with me, the thousands and thousands and thousands of people for the last 20 years that stood on the range with me, know that I'm not teaching warning shots. In Europe, there are some agencies that actually do teach shooting to wound. I've run classes and I've run qualifications for some German and Belgian police particularly. We're part of their course. At my 35th birthday, maybe it was my 40th birthday. I don't know, I'm old, I forget. But one of my birthdays, the guys actually invited me to become an honorary member of a certain team, and they had me shoot the qual course with their MP5 and with their HKP7. And when I shot their qual course to qualify for the honorary membership on that team I was working with for a number of years, I had to shoot the leg, so I had to shoot those little rectangles that represented the leg. That does not mean Rob advocates shooting the wound. It means Rob played along with their, qualification work.
Yeah.
So it can get complicated, and things can get taken out of context. But back to the PD10, Tony Simon on his Firearms Insider podcast this week, I was not on as a guest, but he was talking about the gun and talking about holding it and talking about the fact that it was at SHOT Show and all that. And he gave me a little bit of a ribbing. He said, Rob wrote an article in 2014 where he didn't talk about the PD10 per se, but he listed all the attributes that he would put into a hypothetical, perfect concealed carry gun. And my tongue-in-cheek in that article was kind of like, you'll never see this because a perfect carry gun, or the best we could do with a carry gun, is going to be a whole bunch of compromises. But if I were going to make those compromises, here's the attributes that I would have. And the PD10, as you can buy it next month, really is almost everything that was on that list. It hasn't changed much. But one of the other things I said, again, kind of tongue-in-cheek, because here I was talking about it in public, even though I wasn't revealing that I was starting a gun company. I said, and if another gun company wants to steal these ideas, great. Please give me credit, and please don't talk about it until you're actually ready to sell it. And here we are, 9 years later, when I'm finally, it's almost 9, so it's a little less than 9 years later, we're finally ready to sell it. But it's also, I think people who know me and have watched what I do, it's not like I was sitting in this building for 9 years trying to figure out how to get from napkin sketch to here, right? I mean, since then, I've been married and divorced at least once. I got a 7-year-old child who's amazing that I travel the world with and do stuff with her. We've started Walk the Talk America, or Mike Sedini founded it, invited me to come in from the very beginning, and we've grown that. Personal Defense Network has continued to do its thing. We had a little thing called the pandemic, craziness shutdown.
Sure.
There's been a lot going on. My original business partner, Mike Sedini, he had some things going on too. Originally, he was with Eagle. He was the president of Eagle, and they were going to distribute the gun, and they were sort of a collaborator. We were working almost as a division of Eagle in the beginning. They shut down. That company's gone away. So we really did have a lot of starts and fits, and for there were about 2 years where almost nothing happened with the PD10. But ultimately, yeah, it's been 9 years since we started teasing it, and 8 years since we came out and said, we're doing this. The reality is we moved the company here to Fletcher, North Carolina in February, partnered up with a local manufacturer called Alpha Tech, who does incredible work. And here 10 months later, we knew we were going to be able to bring the pistol to SHOT, and we started moving in that direction. And it's very exciting to be here. And it was cool at SHOT Show. I've worn a lot of hats in the industry over 27, this is my 26th SHOT Show, because we skipped one. So 27 years. I've worn a lot of hats, done a lot of things. It was kind of cool to have so many friends and supporters and collaborators and people I've known over the years. Even people randomly, as I'm walking down the hall, instead of, hey, that was Rob Pincus, or love your TV show, or hey, I got your book, man. It was, hey, man, that gun looks great. And that was a cool thing to hear. So.
I'm not sure I'm pretty sure you don't remember this, but the first time you and I ever met face-to-face was at SHOT Show. I want to say it was 5 years ago. And I walked up to you and I said, hey, man, when is this thing coming out? And you said, well, it's probably going to be within the next year. But our connection, very first time, I want to say it was 5 or 6 years ago, was one of the first times I attended SHOT Show, and that's where we came together. But it has been a circuitous route. Let's do this. I'm going to put up pictures of the PD10 right up on the screen right now. For those of you who are on podcast, this doesn't do much. For those of you who are watching us live, this is the picture of what the Avidity Arms PD10 is going to look like. And then I want to get this comment up coming from Marty Hayes. He wants to know, PD10, is that 10 millimeter?
I'm glad he's got the smiley face in there. I'm a long way off from Washington, but I might go say hi. He's got a new house I haven't seen. I got to go out there. Marty has followed this along. I think he's seen some of the. I think at least one of the early prototypes is actually out there at the Firearms Academy of Seattle on the range. And I think that was 2014. I had a 3D printed prototype out there. Maybe after that, I had one of the live ones. He's been watching this. He knows it's not 10 millimeter. It's the 10 comes from the 10 round magazine. So we're based off of a slim. I think I can do that without getting us in trouble on YouTube, right? So we're based off of a metal 10 round magazine, and it started out. That's a whole nother tangent story. One of the things we thought we would do is say, okay, let's avoid the issue of having to build a gun and design a magazine that work together, kind of a chicken and egg thing. Let's just pick a magazine sort of off the shelf that's very common and easy to find. And as it turns out, rather naively and without doing a whole bunch of due diligence, I guess, in some ways, in the beginning, we just went for what's the best 10-round 9mm 1911 magazine out there, and it was the Chip McCormick mag. But as it turns out, the Chip McCormick mag was also not made in large numbers. It was relatively expensive. It did have some very unique features. And then when Chip sold the company to Wilson, basically that model got discontinued. So we've tweaked it and changed it. And if anybody has some of the old Chip McCormick magazines and they get our magazine, they're going to look at it and see that there are some differences. This has been optimized for the PD10, but that's where the 10 comes from. It's the 10+1 capacity.
Okay, very, very cool. I'm going to get another picture up here, and this is the shot of the PD10 from the rear. And as you can see, what I noticed right to start with was this is a very slim gun, obviously single stack, but even at single stack, it is a very slim handgun. Something not super easy to achieve. There's some inner workings that have to be so that you can still have the firearm work in semi-automatic mode. What were the challenges of making the firearm that thin?
Well, there are a couple things. One is the magazine. If somebody, a lot of people want to compare this to the Glock 48. And in fact, I even wrote another one of those kind of tongue-in-cheek articles people could find out there that was, does the Glock 48 kill the PD10? And the answer would be, from my point of view, certainly no. But the Glock 48 is much thicker, and there's a few comparison photos out there. It's oddly thicker than this gun, given that they both come to the market as a 10-round gun. Now, we know that the Shield magazine will hold 15 in the Glock 48, and one of the ways they achieve that is by having a metal magazine. So right away, going to a metal magazine instead of a polymer-bodied magazine gains you space. The other thing we did is we designed the internals. We don't have a drop-in trigger group kind of a thing, or like that whole trigger module that you get with Glock that sits in the back of the frame, which makes some do-it-yourself stuff and upgrading triggers and changing stuff out. As a gun builder, I got my builder die flag back here. As a gun builder, I love that modularity of the Glock, but that modularity takes up space. So we have more of an older design style, which is the internal parts of the trigger connect directly to the frame. We don't have a sub-chassis that drops in there, and that gains us some space too. The other thing is that I've never had any intention, I'm sorry Marty, of doing a 10mm or a 40 caliber or a 357 SIG version of this gun. This gun was built around 9mm. We could do 30 super carry, right, because it's thinner, but we can't go up to 40. There just isn't enough room for the chamber, for the barrel, or for the magazine. So we really knew we were building a purpose-built 9mm gun. It was going to have the internals connected to the frame, not with a sub-chassis or a drop-in trigger unit. And we also knew we were going to have a metal magazine. So that's where we started, with very thin. But what's interesting is if you look front to back on the grip, if you were to go back to that profile view, front to back were not particularly small. And a lot of the micro compacts or subcompacts, even the stagger stacks that come out nowadays, they're kind of like broomstickish. They're kind of like almost a small square, rounded square grip. And that's kind of awkward for a human hand, really. So we have a relatively normal length from front to rear, but very, very thin. And then I think the contouring of the way that the grip is shaped and the deep tang, more of like a Steyr M or a CZ, combined with a straight back after the swell, more like a 1911. If they just an undercut under the trigger guard, the internals sit very low in the frame also, so that gives us a low bore axis and a relatively low and again very thin slide. Our slide is actually 0.9 inches. For a comparison, the Hellcat is 1.1. So you say, well, gee, Rob, that's 2 inches. Does it matter? Well, when it's over 20% difference, it matters. And then we say at widest we're an inch, and that is the I can't show it, but the slide stop kicks out a little bit, so you can get your thumb under it positively to push it up. So the slide stop, the outside edge of the slide stop takes us to a full inch. Otherwise, the grip is mostly about 0.8, and the slide is 0.9. The magazine release comes out to 0.9. It's oversized, but it's not extended, so it doesn't stick out very far, but there's a lot of purchase area on it. So, I say that my kind of 30-second tagline pitch on it is, a lot of times we've heard in the gun industry over the last couple of decades, we wish guns were made by shooters or designed by shooters and not marketers or engineers. Well, I think we did one better. This gun is designed by someone who's taught defensive shooting for 2 decades and watched thousands of human hands on all the different types of guns there are. And that's where I started. This isn't the perfect gun for me as a shooter. This isn't even the perfect gun necessarily for me as a concealed carry guy. It's the gun that I think is the best set of compromises for the widest portion of the people who actually train and who actually carry their guns.
We get a picture of what you were just talking about up, and then I want to get a couple comments in. But that's the picture. That's a picture that Rob was just talking about the side view of the. So you can see it's not a mouse gun. It's very narrow, but it's I would say full size if you talk about barrel length, if you talk about profile.
It's a 4-inch barrel, and so it's a 4-inch barrel and 4-inch flat. I call it a mid-size gun. You know, if you set it down on top of a Glock 19, it's similar in length, certainly at the slide, and then in the length of the grip. You know, it fills the hand. That's one of the problems with a lot of the small guns is you got, you know, a finger or two that gets left hanging underneath. So this gun is it's a compromise of carryability and shootability. And the carryability is really aided by the slimness, as is the ability to fit smaller hands. But the length of the grip, and again, the front to back width of the grip, the way the trigger is designed, the way the trigger feels, you know, and maybe John can speak to it a little bit. He's gotten to shoot it. I think it fills the hand well. It doesn't get lost in a large hand either, and that's the compromise there.
Yeah, John, you have been able to shoot, I believe, a pre-production model of this. What's your thoughts, man?
Well, I have short fingers, and also have kind of I broke my little pinky here. It allowed me to get a complete grip on it. The trigger, access the trigger very easily. The trigger initially is slightly a longer pull, but has a short reset. I'm kind of going a little bit from memory. I liked it. I mean, I will be purchasing one. So, I mean, that says everything, I think.
Yeah. Let me get a couple questions in here real quick. First one up is Mark Lindblom. Says, I'm patiently waiting. I appreciate you keeping your word and saving a serial number for me referencing my military group. I got to shoot a PD-10 4 to 5 years ago at a class. Thanks again, Rob, is what Mark says. And let me get one more up here. And Marty Hayes again wants to know, what's the factory trigger pull weight? That's an interesting question.
Just under 5 pounds, yeah. It's so it's just under 5 pounds, and what we went for was what I'm trying to describe to people who really know. Now, don't get scared off by this, because again, since we're prefacing this with about 5 pounds, just under 5 pounds, it's a experience more like pulling a double action trigger than it is pulling what I would say is most of the striker fired guns. So most of the striker fired guns out there have that wall, or that kind of, there's almost nothing, then you hit a wall, and now there's almost everything. And a lot of people will try to stage the trigger right on that edge, and that causes a lot of problems. Now, in an isolated, controlled environment, you can learn to stage a trigger on a striker-fired gun pretty well, but I think in a dynamic situation with any kind of movement with the target, or obviously the kind of thing that comes with defensive shooting, I don't want people to try to turn their trigger from a striker-fired into a single-stage kind of trigger. So we wanted as little a wall as possible, as little difference from when the striker pressure is first engaged all the way through the break, and then a short, crisp reset. So I think that's what, when John says the trigger pull is a little longer than normal, what most people are used to with a striker-fired gun is there really isn't much trigger pull at all. In the beginning, there isn't much pressure, and then the pressure starts. We try to have consistent pressure from front to rear, and it's not 100% consistent because that's not really possible with striker-fired guns, but the way we've engineered this, there isn't a really heavy wall midway through the press. So we get a consistent 5 pound on the way back that's relatively long in terms of when it's applied, and then the short, crisp reset, and obviously that's going to be about 5 pounds too. With the striker-fired gun, your break is the same poundage. It's not like a double action where it's 12 pounds and then 3, 10 pounds and then 2. It's always going to be about 4 to 3/4 to 5 from the factory.
Very, very cool. Now, I promised I wouldn't keep you very late, and we're already just a little bit over the time I told you I'd have you out of here, but if somebody were to be really interested in this and want to go through the process of starting to get one, it'll be available next month for firearms retailers to order. Am I getting that correct?
The firearms retailers have already been able to place their order with Davidson's. So if they have a Davidson's account, one of the biggest, I think, most respected distributors in the industry, I was really excited about being able to align with them for our SHOT Show launch. So people who are FFLs, or you can go to your gun dealer and ask them to contact Davidson's. They can place an order for the optic cut version. We are also taking direct orders through avidityarms.com from dealers. They can fill out a dealer inquiry on the PD10 page, and we're selling the standard slide for less money. We're selling the standard slide without an optic cut directly to dealers for those who want that model. And people can, because we're aligned with Davidson's, that gives us access to the gallery of guns. So right now, right after the show, people can go to galleryofguns.com and see all the specs and the pricing for the PD10 through Davidson's. And what happens with the gallery of guns is you can order the gun and it'll be sent to your FFL. Now, Mark mentioned something years ago. I told a lot of our students who were excited about the gun, we gave them some opportunities with no money, no down payment, just because they were students in certain classes. We gave them an opportunity to say, if you want a serial number, it's kind of cool. Get to own the gun company, and I can save serial number 555 for you. So we do have a reservation list, but that was a really small list for just some very close guys, friends, families, and students of certain classes. But generally speaking, people are going to go through their readers through the galleryofguns.com. You can go to any FFL and ask them to contact us directly, or Davidson's, and that's how you get your hands on a PD10. We're going to be ramping our production up, so relatively small batch, about 100 guns will go out in the first batch, then we'll do 200, 300, 400, and we're ramping up to our estimated regular production level by about the middle of the summer.
Okay.
One other thing I want to say too, if I can have, I know you said you're me late, but I want to say we also have full-on holster support. One of the frustrations of the gun industry, especially the training community, is people launch the next greatest defensive gun, clearly made for carry, especially a lot of these small guns, but there's no holster support. Well, I went to my good friends in the industry that make incredibly high-quality stuff, G-Code, inside the waistband, outside the waistband, JM4 Tactical, inside and outside the waistband with their leather options, and the hybrid option from Tac Rig, which can also be configured for inside or outside the waistband. So I think as we sit here right now, people can go to just those three holster companies, and the configuration options at G-Code, it's 2 models, but it's 200 different versions you could build. But right away, I think there's 7 different models of holster available just from those 3 companies right now. And we're really excited about that, because that's one thing that I've always been frustrated about is a gun ships and it's got crappy sights. I got to fix them. But some company doesn't have a proprietary cut. We have a very popular cut that all the sight companies are going to have, but we're also shipping with my own claw sights that I designed for Ameriglow a decade ago. So I think those are good to go. And the holster support's there. It's got the oversized mag release. The contouring's been done. The undercut's been done. The texturing is there. Hopefully people are going to buy this. And I have had some people jump in the comments and say, man, I'm going to make this my carry gun. I appreciate the love and the effort and the excitement, but what I really want people to say is, I'm going to get that gun and I'm going to take it to a class, or I'm going to get that gun and I'm going to take it to the range. And if I find that it works for me, which I hope it does, and I trust in what you're doing, Rob, then if it works for me, and if I take it to a class and I get the holster, then I'm going to carry it. That's pretty cool.
All right. I lied again because you brought up something I want to talk about real quick. I want to get 2 more pictures up here. First of all, there's that little beauty, and then this one. And that brings up a point I want to bring up with you, and that is this. Is it your plan for all these to have threaded available barrels, or is that something you're going to have to order specifically for the firearm you want?
So we'll have the threaded barrel available as an aftermarket accessory. We may do some limited editions that ship with them, but right now the threaded barrels and that cool looking thread protector, which would fit on any 9mm threaded barrel, that's all going to be available at the avidityarms.com website. The optic cut, again, is also going to be an option. I was shocked when we went through the process of how much more would it cost us to ship the gun? Well, by the time you do the extra cuts and the threading of the holes, and then you have to design the whole plate, and then you have to do processes and coatings on that, and then you have to ship it with the screws. I was surprised how much more it costs, but our MSRP on it is we're actually losing money on the extra right now. So we're doing $625 on the optic cut and $599 MSRP on the standard slide. Obviously, we expect in the shops it'll probably be $25 to $50 less than that at retail. So, but the threaded barrel will be an optional accessory that you would get from us. And we're also working on some things like, a long slide. Some people have seen our chopped grip version with an 8-round magazine. It's a little bit easier to conceal if you're just wearing like a tighter T-shirt or something. So we've got a lot of things in the pipeline. Avidity Arms, 500 years from now, we're the next Beretta.
Is that all? Yeah.
Well, they're about to celebrate their 500th anniversary, right? So our 500th anniversary is coming up, and by then we're going to have rifles and shotguns. Maybe by our 5th anniversary, we'll have a rifle, shotgun, double stack, couple, maybe 8, 9, 10 different things out there that go pew. I'm excited about it.
Before I let Rob go, John, sorry.
I want to second Rob on the sights. I love the sights on this gun. I love the black back sight, and the front sight is so easy to pick up. These are great sights, iron sights. I'm never that good with red dots for some reason, but iron sights I can pick up easily, and these you can see. So
I appreciate that.
Amy, do you have anything before I let Rob go?
No, it's a very thorough explanation and overview of the gun, so I'm looking forward to getting it in my hands and checking it out as well.
Awesome. I do look forward to that, and there's nothing better for me than putting it out there in people's hands and getting that honest feedback. Hopefully it's positive, but even if it's not positive, if it's constructive, then it may affect the future generation of the gun. But so far, so good. It's not going to be perfect for everybody, and obviously not everybody's going to buy it. We're not going to make enough. So those of you who aren't going to buy it, we're kind of okay with that. But we want everybody to take a look at it, and we think we'll get enough buyers for the guns we can make. And again, we're going to incrementally add to the line and improve as we go. So looking forward to getting that feedback. It's interesting to be carrying the gun you designed, and it's really interesting right now to be thinking about other people carrying that gun. And I can't let the podcast go without reminding everybody just how important it is to be a responsible gun owner. And unfortunately, I had to have a meeting with everybody that works in this factory recently, and just say, look, you're part of the gun community now. Whether you signed up to be a CNC operator or a bookkeeper, you're part of the gun industry, and we all have a responsibility to do everything we can to make sure that one of these guns with my logo and with the logo they're attached to now doesn't ever end up in a crime scene photo or something even more tragic than that. And it's something we have to kind of steel ourselves against. And we know we're doing a greater good, but part of the greater good that we do is to accept those realities, and those things can happen, and do everything we can to prevent them. So that's another thing that obviously Avidity Arms is going to be big on.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we do need to step aside to break. And Rob, I've already kept you almost 10 minutes longer than I told you I would. But all right. I always seem to do that with you. But anyway, thanks again, Rob, and best of luck on the PD10. Everybody, do talk to your firearms retailer if you're at all interested in this. They can order from Davidson now, and it should be available and be able to be in your hands sometime next month. Rob, again, thanks. And folks, we are going to step aside. We'll be right back right after we hear from somebody. We'll be right back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
All right, we are back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. I want to just say, Rob, before we get started with news, with what happened last week, it was obviously there with the news story that happened. Rob didn't have to come on the air. He could have just said, let's delay until things calm down a little bit. But he was absolutely stand up. He said, look, I'll talk about that, but I want to talk about the PD10 too. So thank you, Rob, for being a stand-up guy, discussing both of them, and going ahead and coming on the show. Let's go ahead and get started with news. Amy, I see your name in front of the first story. You want to talk about Florida?
Florida is teasing permitless carry again, and it's set to become the 26th state to allow citizens to carry firearms without a permit under legislation outlined Monday by Republican House Speaker Paul Renner. Conservatives and gun rights groups in Florida have long pushed to give Florida residents the ability to carry firearms with a permit, known by supporters as constitutional carry, but past legislation has routinely gotten bogged down. This year's efforts are bolstered by Governor Ron DeSantis, who has repeatedly said he would sign a permitless carry bill if lawmakers sent it to his desk.
Oh, I need that one instead of that one. Yeah, I'm gonna lead out first on this one. Florida has been teasing permitless carry the last at least 3 years in a row. So since 2020, they've been toying with it. There's been one senator, I know he's a Republican. I believe he's in the Miami area, that keeps holding it back because he's a long-term senator there, has some he's high placed in some of the right committees, and just hasn't let it go forward. Everything I see and everybody I've talked to said this could really be the year. Personally, I'm going to hold out and say I'll believe it when it hits Ron DeSantis' desk, and we'll see if they're numbered 26, 27, 28, or later, because I'll believe it when I see it.
I agree with you there, Paul. One thing that's happened in the past is that Michael Bloomberg gave a significant, like, six-figure campaign contribution to some Republican leader who then sat on the bill, and I think the amount of money was like $200,000. Now, it was a campaign contribution, but it sure sounds like a bribe. That said, but it would be great if Florida did it. Excuse me. They would make it so that now the second and third largest states in the country have permitless carry, and they would certainly help. They certainly help offset your California and your New York.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Amy, you have something you want to talk about on this one?
Yeah, I just want to say that this really stresses the importance of, residents in those states really, contacting your local legislators and letting them know what bills you support, because this really just will, I guess, get to the right person and get to the right people and show public support of a bill, especially in a state like Florida, where we know there are a lot of supporters of constitutional carry.
Oops. All right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take our next story here. U.S. Senators Chris Murphy and Richard Blumenthal, both of them Connecticut senators, are pushing for federal legislation to protect people from certain assault weapons, saying a federal law will make communities and schools safer and save lives. This goes hand in hand with the legislation Governor Led Lamont has already proposed and will fully unveil next month to stop shootings and mass shootings on the state level. Now this quote just burns me. The quickest way to kill as many and as many people as possible is for someone to get their hands on an AR-15, said Murphy. The reintroduced bill would ban the sale, transfer, importation, and manufacture of 205 military assault weapons across the country. Legal gun owners of these weapons are already allowed to keep them under the legislation. An assault weapon is a broad term. The bill does exempt more than 2,000 types of guns that are used for hunting and other defensive purposes. Murphy said with the bill, the Second Amendment and increased gun restrictions can coexist. I'm sorry, was that external? John, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, Murphy and Blumenthal just really gripe me. Blumenthal more than any, because he said he served in Vietnam, which he did not, which really irritates me. But more than that, I just don't see how any assault weapons ban, and it's a misnomer anyway, because a weapon doesn't assault, a person assaults. I don't see how any of these could pass post-Bruin. There is no long... I mean, there were multiple... Lewis and Clark had a 22-round air gun.
Yep. Well, and let's go back. The Puckle gun was a multi-barreled, multi-shot firearm that was in the Revolutionary War, the 20 years before the Constitution was ratified.
You've had the 4-barrel pepper pots for a long time. I mean, you could put 4 shots, boom, 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 or 4 shots at once. Mm-hmm. Not to get gross, but if you want to kill a lot of people, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Gasoline and locking in the exit door does just fine.
The single most effective way to kill a lot of people quickly is to get elected to government office. Government has killed more people than guns across the globe. Yeah, anyway. Amy, what you got? Have you got anything for this one?
It's just funny, the Second Amendment, Murphy said the Second Amendment and increased gun restrictions can coexist. It's just so ironic because the point of the Second Amendment is to not have restrictions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely it is. Let me come up here real quickly. There is one other one here. The reintroduced bill would ban the sale, transfer, importation, and manufacture of 205 military assault weapons across the country. They banned the AR-15. I will just about guarantee you in about 5 minutes somebody's going to come up with the AS-14 or the AD-18.
Yeah. There was an AR-18.
Yeah.
And an AR-180. I came across a quote today that is so appropriate here. It said, "Gun control is like giving a lung cancer patient a bottle of cough suppressant and saying the cancer is cured because their coughing went away."
Yeah.
You're treating the symptom, not the cause.
You're absolutely right. And before we go to the next story, I just completed, an hour and a half ago, I completed the bullet for today. And Tom Knight and I talked about the mass shootings a little over a week ago in California. And the one common denominator in all of those issues that California is having, and honestly, New York is having, any other place that has mass shootings, they all seem to be in these anti-gun states where the general public is not allowed to carry. The general public is not allowed to defend themselves. That is the commonality. They're making the entire state a target-rich environment for bad guys with guns. If you want to stop mass shootings, if you want to stop these things, allow the general public to do what the general public has always done: protect themselves. That is how you stop mass shootings, because you'll get something like the shooting in the Indiana Mall. You'll get one person killed, and then a good guy with a gun going, "Well, I've seen this. I prepared for this. Draw, bang, bang," and 10 shots, or well, excuse me, I think it was 9 shots, 8 of them on target. Bad guy done, 1 victim, and the press coverage drops way down because the bad guy didn't kill a lot of people. All of a sudden, it's not a problem anymore because more bad guys don't say, "Oh, look, that guy got 18. I bet you I could get 20."
Yeah. If you think about it, you look at what happened in Buffalo and you look at Monterey Park, California. In both cases, the firearm used by the killers was already banned under that state law, whether in New York or California. If the law was going to be effective in stopping mass shootings, why didn't it stop that? Because it's not going to. We don't know how that 72-year-old man got his gun, but from what I understand, he had it for years. So...
Well, he couldn't. That particular firearm, we're talking about an AR pistol, has been outlawed in California for 30 years. So, yeah.
He had a Mac 10.
Mm-hmm. And that's been outlawed for a very long time in California. John, let's go ahead and talk about Schumer. You want to take this one?
Yeah. Schumer's going after the JR-15. The last thing we need to be doing is reducing in size these deadly weapons of war and then marketing them to children. But that's what is happening, said Schumer. That's not exactly what's happening. The JR-15, produced by We1 Tactical, is a rimfire rifle chambered in .22 long rifle. It's basically a semi-automatic version of the single-shot .22 that I use to teach my own kids how to be safe and responsible with a firearm. If the JR-15 had been around a decade ago, I probably would have used that instead of the cricket rifle that I purchased specifically to introduce my children to the world of safe and responsible gun use. It is illegal to sell guns to anyone under 18. Excuse me. But pointing to the company's webpage, which features a child looking down the sights of a gun, Schumer says it's obvious that is what his company is trying to do. This stuff is pretty despicable, so we want the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, to give it a thorough look, Schumer said. If I remember correctly, I did see the JR-15 at range day. I didn't shoot it, but you have guns that have been reduced in size. You have the 80% sized 1911 in .380 from Browning, the little Browning.
Well,
so,
I don't think that.
Amy?
Yeah, I don't think that just because a manufacturer reduces the size, of firearms means that they're marketing them to children. It just means that they're making it smaller for the person who needs maybe that application of a smaller firearm. As you guys know, when you use a .22, you're able to practice your marksmanship without, reducing recoil. And the second part of that I wanted to say is I don't think it's necessarily wrong that on the company's webpage they're filming a child looking down the sights of a gun. I think that teaching children, safety first and then responsible gun use over time is a responsible thing to do. So it always gets me when people say, "Oh, you're marketing to children because you're using children in these ads or these pictures," and I don't necessarily think that's a wrong thing as long as the image is thought of and well placed.
Well, and this is not going to do much for podcast listeners, but for people that are watching us on video. Right now, I'm going to put up that website on the screen. As you can see, there is a picture of a young lady, of a child, a young girl looking down what appears to me to be a red dot optic. What you also see in that same picture off We1 Tactical is obviously a guy looking right over that little girl's shoulder. So it's obvious there's a parent or an adult supervision there. So even on the We1 Tactical website, there's obviously parental or at least adult oversight on that. So,
one thing they're trying to do is actually kill the gun culture. They're trying to make it so that you cannot bring up your children in the gun culture, and that you can only join it as an adult. So, teaching gun safety in summer camps, having scholastic shooting, whether it's pistol or shotgun or somebody doing the Appleseed. They want to do away with it. They want to kill the gun culture. And that's why they're going after that. That's why California has the law that says you cannot market your guns to children. And what it's done is basically killed off a lot of the hunter safety classes. So they're not concerned about the JR-15. They're just want to try to stomp out the gun culture.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I would be shocked to learn that anybody took down a 7-Eleven with a JR-15, because I'll just be very honest with you. As an adult, is it smaller than an AR? Yeah, it's smaller than an AR. Is it more difficult for an adult to shoot it than a regular AR? I would also say yes, it probably is more difficult for an adult to shoot that than it would be a standard AR for an adult to shoot. Neither of them are particularly concealable, and so I don't think this is an issue that we need to worry a whole lot about. And yet Schumer, of course, is.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and I'll take our next story here. This one off of Examiner.com. And by the way, that last one, that was a Cam Edwards story from Bearing Arms, and he wrote that the part about the cricket being the one that he taught his kids to shoot with. But this story off Examiner.com, multiple Oklahoma sheriffs, including those in Oklahoma and Logan counties, say they will not enforce a recent U.S. Department of Justice ruling on firearms. In January, the Justice Department formalized a rule to address stabilizing braces and accessories used to convert pistols into short-barreled rifles to be fired from the shoulder, ordering that any weapons with such accessories that constitute rifles under the NFA must be registered. In a video statement, Oklahoma County Sheriff Tommy Johnson III said, according to state law, Oklahoma law enforcement cannot enforce a rule established by the Justice Department as opposed to a federal law established by Congress. John, I'm gonna tee you up here in just a second, but what I want to say is this is where state level Second Amendment sanctuaries do have some good. What do you think, John?
Well, under Supreme Court precedent, state law enforcement officers cannot be forced to act as federal law enforcement officers. They cannot be made to enforce a federal law as opposed to being a state law. And it was Prince versus U.S., and it had to do with the initial Brady Act. Jay Prince was a sheriff out in, I want to say, Idaho, and they didn't give him any money to do background checks or whatever. And he said, I'm not doing it. You didn't give us the money. You can't force us to do it. It's up to you to do it. And the Supreme Court agreed.
Well, and that's a federal law, not a federal regulation, which is all this is.
Yeah. Moreover, I mean, if you're looking at a federal regulation like this, I know SAF already has a lawsuit against it.
Yep.
From 2021, there will be more lawsuits. Only Congress has the right and the ability to write a law excuse me, with a criminal penalty.
Mm-hmm.
ATF can do a civil penalty, but not a criminal penalty. If you have an NFA item that is unregistered and you're arrested with it, you could be facing 10 years in prison. They cannot, under many court rulings, they cannot go in and say, okay, we're changing that. We said it was okay, but it's not okay. And if you don't register it, it's now 10 years in jail. That doesn't fly.
Right. And we also had, now I wish Rob was here because he can chapter and verse this, but there was a Supreme Court decision that came out just a week separate from the Bruin decision, West Virginia versus EPA, I want to say it was, that greatly dropped the EPA's ability to make law or to enforce regulation and penalties of regulation. And a lot of people in the Second Amendment community have taken heart from that, from this particular Supreme Court. I think that will do a lot in the pistol brace lawsuit that's going forward, because we already have precedent of the EPA way overstepping its bounds and the Supreme Court slapping them back a bit. So, Amy, you want to take our next story here?
Yes, in Omaha, Nebraska, a university ordered a student organization to remove political posters depicting guns and slogans that some found offensive, according to reports. The College Fix, which is a conservative news website focused on higher education, reported that Creighton University has a ban on pro-Second Amendment posters, and members of the Young Americans for Liberty are currently fighting to get that ban overturned. After being told to remove the political posters, university officials told Mason Wood, chapter leader during the fall 2022 semester, he was required to fill out paperwork to host a controversial event if he wanted to pass a petition seeking to end the school's ban on gun images. A representative for the Young Americans for Liberty told the College Fix that the school administration at Creighton maintains its ban on imagery of guns, even when it comes to political speeches on the Second Amendment.
Yeah, I think you and I are in the same boat here, John. There's so much to get into, I don't know where to start.
Well, I'm going to say, I was born and raised Catholic. I am pretty much what you call non-practicing, but nonetheless, I used to have a lot of respect for the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, an order of priests. And they used to have some of the best colleges, but they've really gone wacko lately. I don't care whether it's Georgetown, Creighton, University, they've gone overboard. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Where I think I want to go is, I'm thinking back to the 1960s, and specifically the Vietnam War protests in the 1960s and early 70s. And, fight against power and don't trust the man. If you're over 30, don't listen to anybody over the age of 30. And when those college kids grew up, they got positions in colleges. And now you don't dare speak against us or we'll expel you from school. Where's free speech now compared to 1960s, when these people running these universities were going to university?
Exactly. And these people actually now, you're probably a second generation, because if you were in college in the 60s, you're in your 70s now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's the people that they trained are now taking it a step further. It's not just that your speech offends me, your speech threatens me. And I am scared because of what you just said. please.
Yeah.
Well,
Whatever happened
that's
to
the
sticks
scary
and
part
stones?
is what they're teaching at colleges and universities these days. You know, it's setting us up for the next generation of people running our government and our universities and colleges to teach these same policies and concepts. It's a scary time, actually, because of that.
Yeah, Mike White over on the YouTube side says how soon they forget. Well, in let me in somewhat in their defense, in the middle 60s, I wasn't around yet. I was born in 1969. I barely remember the early 70s. As a matter of fact, the earliest news story I can remember watching the TV when Nixon resigned, but I was a very, very, very young person then. But I can remember that my mom and dad were really upset my mom was upset. My dad was about deliriously happy when Nixon resigned. Turns out my mom was right. My dad not so much. But
I guess I'm the only one here who can say, where were you when Kennedy was shot?
Yeah, I'm even too young for that. But I studied history in school, and that was very recent history when I was going through school. But I've continued to study things as I've grown older, and yeah, the irony here just gets me. So let's do this. We're long on news. I want to go ahead. I want to get through DGUs because we've got a lot of them this week. We're going to step aside to break. We're going to hear from JPFO. We'll come back and we'll do the defensive gun use segment right after this. Hang on, everybody.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Second Amendment's Polite Society the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. To lead off this segment, as I always do, these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended only as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Amy, it looks like you're working on our first one. What you got?
Well, this first DGU is out of Norman, Oklahoma. Some businesses are prone to have cash, and your neighborhood ice cream store is one of them. 3 weeks ago, the ice creamatory was robbed. The owner of the store was then on edge. At 1 a.m., he called police to tell them he had shot someone who had attempted to rob him. The man broke into the store and went behind the counter where the owner of the store was. When the man reached for what the owner thought was a weapon, he defended himself and shot the man. The man's sister confirmed his identity and that she believed he had a knife on him. He also had his ID on him, which confirmed his identity. The medical examiner ruled it a homicide. He reported he had been shot 3 times, and one of the shots was to the back of his head. According to the man's sister, he would have run when confronted by the owner. We have said to stop shooting when the threat stops, and it seems the owner had no training. Norman police are investigating, and according to Lieutenant Ali Jaffrey, they are looking for answers as to whether it was a justified shooting or self-defense.
I'm gonna say this in that we do not know, and one of the things I'm going to say to start with is if somebody is turning to run away, the very first thing that turns is the head, because you always want to be looking in the direction you're going. So if I'm going to turn around and run away, very first thing, and it turns farther than my chest does, is my head. So if you had 2-3 quick shots, and as the weapon is traveling up, I could easily see what is a defensive shooting being looked at as maybe not because the last shot fired either hit the side or the back of the head. I could see that happening. Good on this guy for having a firearm on him. And I do believe this is Oklahoma, where it is free America. There is no permit required to have a firearm on you. So I just hope everything works out okay for the business owner.
Yeah. And I know Masad Ayub has talked about cases like this quite often, whether it's in the back, the head, the back of the head, in the person in the back. And he has shown how, the body unfalling can turn and the person gets shot in the back by the time you pull the trigger. So, yeah. We don't know. That's the key thing. We don't know.
Amy, you want to add anything to this one?
Yeah, I'm with you, Paul. I just hope it works out for the business owner. I think that, of course, the criminal who comes in and is attempting to rob him, that store owner had the right to defend himself and his property. So I think that there's too many details, and obviously they're investigating it, and hopefully it works out for the store owner.
The one thing I would say is you really need to rename that store.
Yes.
Ice Crematorium?
Yes.
Ice
Crematorium, yes. That I don't know, even if there weren't an issue with a crime have been committed there, I don't know that I'd want to be going there because of the name of the business. I don't exactly want to go eat at a crematorium anyway. Yeah. So, business owner, when you are cleared, as I hope you will be, and you're able to get back to your normal life, please consider a name change for your business.
There you go.
John, you want to take our next one out of Florida?
Yeah, it's out of Sanford, Florida. 2:20 a.m. and a young lady had just finished her shift as a bartender at George's Tavern. Luckily for her, her father asked her boyfriend to go by the bar at the end of the night to make sure she got home safely. The young woman's Escalade was parked behind the bar. There was a porta-john behind the bar, but we don't know why. However, an unidentified man was inside. He came out of the porta-john and grabbed the young woman and forced her to the ground. According to a tavern customer, the assailant had been waiting there for hours and was now choking and beating the young lady in the head. Her boyfriend saw what was happening and took action. He removed his gun from his waist and shot the attacker. The attacker was killed by the shot. The press was able to see a hole in the back door of the Escalade. Police said based on based on surveillance video, the reports by witnesses agreed with the video. She suffered bruises but was doing all right and actually wanted to return to work. She is a mother and is studying to be a nurse. Police said no charges are pending against the couple. They are still trying to identify the attacker and may have to release pictures of his tattoos if they cannot identify him through any other means. Amy?
It seems justified according to the story there. I mean, if the guy was obviously setting up a trap and waiting for a victim, he chose the wrong one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the excuse me.
And this is why
I have to think that this bar is in a high crime area, or that there was a problem with this particular bar, because at the very beginning, the girl's father, the bartender's father, asked her boyfriend to go at near bar close and watch over her. So if Florida is not part of free America yet, as we discussed earlier in the show, but you have to think that the young man did have a permit, because if he didn't, I don't really know where in Florida you wouldn't get at least a citation for carrying without a permit, but there was not anything pending. And the only other thing I've got is, John, apparently you are not familiar with the gang culture or Cadillac automobiles, because I believe the rest of the country calls that an Escalade.
Yeah. I'm not a GM person, so.
I'm not either. At least not since the Obama era when it became government motors. But let me get one comment up before we go to our next one here. Just a second here, and let me hit that button. John says, most important, STFU, and if you think about it, you should know what that means, until you speak to your legal association. Until you speak to an attorney or something like ACLDN or another organization you are part of, it's good not to speak to police or especially prosecutors until you are represented. I'm going to go and I'm going to take the next one here. This is out of Mountainville, Ohio. Braden Jarrett was home from school and looking out the living room window when he noticed a strange car parked sideways in his driveway. He walked into the kitchen and saw a dude he had never seen before. His mother was at work, but Braden knew where she kept her handgun. He'd been hunting and grown up with guns, so I knew about the safety. She stores a handgun unloaded, but magazine was right next to it. The clip is next to it. He knows where it's at, so he grabbed it and held on to both pieces as he stood in this living room doorway, said Ashley Jarrett, his mother. Braden stood in the doorway to the living room and watched the outside door open. He figured if it was a delivery service, they would drop off the package and just leave it there. But when the inside door started to open, he loaded the gun. I didn't say anything, but when I cocked the gun and pointed at the door, he said, "Oh, expletive," and ran, Braden said. He immediately called his mother at work. When he called me, he asked smart questions first. Did you have anyone coming over? Were you expecting any packages? Before he then said, "Well, I think someone tries to break in and I had to pull your gun," said the mother. After posting about the attempted break-in and neighbors helped her identify the car, the Geauga, Geauga County, one of the county sheriff's offices, Braden picked out the suspect from a photo lineup. Suspect has been found and charged with burglary. Ashley says she only knows him as a friend on social media. They may have mutual real acquaintances in real life. He may have used her post to learn her routine, but this is the second day of a new routine for Braden. She warns about posting on social media and has also added security cameras to her home. He's so laid back, I have more anxiety about this than he does for sure. I lined up the school and told them to set up a counseling meeting if needed, and his exact words were, "I'm not afraid of guns. All I had to do is pick up a gun and aim it. I didn't have to use it," said Ashley. "I didn't want to pull the trigger on the guy. That would have been a whole different situation, but when I knew when it first happened, I had to stay calm," said Braden. I think this is I don't know how old Braden is, and I don't remember reading it. Let me see if I can pull the source story up here quick. It says teen in the headline, and I'm scanning this. 16 years old is the age of the young man, so certainly old enough to safely handle a firearm. I just wish Mom would have done more familiarization with him. And I don't think it's a great idea. Maybe at 16 it's okay, but certainly a lot younger than that, I would want the firearm where it couldn't easily be accessed by anybody who hasn't had familiarization with firearms.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
John, Amy, you want to speak up on this?
Yeah, I agree. I think this shows the importance of, why, if you have firearms in the home, there needs to be, especially when the kids are younger, some type of safety, talk. Like Kid Safe Foundation helps, teach safety to youth, and as they get older, as they become more responsible, absolutely a familiarization with the firearm is good. And I also want to add, there was something in the article about the woman realizing that her routine was picked up by this possible perpetrator on social media. And I've definitely been more careful about what I'm posting personally on social media. And I think being aware of the friends that you're making acquaintances with on social media and what you're displaying on there, that needs to be just as a reminder to every one of our listeners as well.
Oh yeah, and let me also state this, in that it's been a long standing routine of mine. If somebody sends me a friend request on Facebook or wants to connect with me on MeWe or any other social media platform, I almost if they've got guns on their page anywhere, or if they mention to me that they follow me because of my work at Second Amendment Foundation or the shows, I will almost routinely accept the friend request. I don't really do a whole lot of background, but I don't know everybody that's on my Facebook friends list. There's no way I ever could. I'm sure John and Amy, you're in the same boat.
Exactly.
I, however, do not put anything ever about scheduling, about anything like that online. The only exception I'll make is if Susan and I are out for lunch. Occasionally, I'll post that we're out for lunch, and we're only out for a few hours or something like that. If somebody does happen to be watching Facebook, know who I am, and know that, okay, he's at lunch, I've got this amount of time to get in. Good luck getting past the dogs. So, all right, because the dogs never ever go with me to lunch. I think we're a little long, and I do want to get out of here within our 90 minutes. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and skip the commercial break, because it's really all I got left is JPFO, and I run those gratis anyway. I don't get paid for those. John, let's talk about what's been going on at OnlyGunsAndMoney.com.
Okay. As many know, SAF was the first to sue Illinois in federal court over the new assault weapons ban. With the luck of the draw, we got a judge appointed by Trump. Now, the state of Illinois has transferred a state case to federal court and wants all cases consolidated under it. There are a total of 4 cases. The reason is, in their case, they had an Obama judge. However, it doesn't work that way. It's called judge shopping. And that judge, fortunately, just said this afternoon, it all gets put under the first judge or the Trump judge. I have a number of posts up about SHOT Show. The people are what make it great, more so than the products, at least in my opinion. The products are fun, but it's the people that make SHOT Show. Unfortunately, there are also what I call swag vipers. People who vacuum up every little bit of swag and then rush to sell it at high prices on eBay. It just isn't right. And moving from the SHOT Show to the NRA, I refuse to make any endorsements for the NRA board. As I explained to Amanda a while back, I think it would have hurt her chances more than help her if I were to endorse her, and she understood that. Along with that post is a guest post on the NRA's finances from former director Rocky Marshall. He feels that they're going to have probably run out of money by summer. And being that he had been a high-level corporate executive responsible for cash flow, balance sheets, income statements, I think he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, he was saying more.
I'm sorry. That and more at OnlyGunsAndMoney.com. Yeah.
He was saying real bankruptcy instead of the possible. And for those of you, you should be reading John's blog on a daily basis. You really should. But yeah, Rocky Marshall, when I read that one, he's saying real bankruptcy as opposed to the bankruptcy they filed in New York, possibly in the very near future. So, and gosh, that's so unfortunate because we need a strong NRA. I work for the Second Amendment Foundation, but I'll guarantee you, because he already has, my boss would say we need a strong NRA. And it's so unfortunate that the path the NRA has taken over the last few years. Amy, have you been writing anything, or do you want to add to that, or?
No, well, I've been doing a lot of copywriting, but nothing with the byline lately. So I don't really have anything to contribute there. But I do with the SAF that we do need a strong NRA. We need all the pro-gun organizations to kind of work together, especially right now, because, and we've said this every year, that our rights are being taken away from us. But I was looking at some stuff in the state of Washington this morning, and stuff is happening, and it's a scary time. I can't stress that enough. But thank you for those articles, John. They're very informative.
Thanks.
All right. Do you want to remind everybody we do have a listeners group on Facebook. If you're a member of Facebook and so inclined, search Polite Society Podcast Listeners. I don't post in there as much as I should. Honestly, lately I haven't looked in there as much as I should, but I always say this, I hope to in the very near future get more time to go into that. But if you're inclined, there's a lot of listeners there. There's some good conversation. Just go ask to join the Polite Society Podcast Listeners Group. That does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Rob Pincus for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until the next time.
Stay safe. Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, we are clear of the recording. We're still streaming. I want to get this up while we're still on the air, so to speak. 500 Magnum says FPC is doing good work. They are.
Yeah.
They are partners with SAF on several lawsuits. I expect that to continue. But they do good work. If I encourage everybody to be a member of the Second Amendment Foundation. I would also encourage you, if you have the extra income, to be a member of the Firearms Policy Coalition as well. Also got one. Paul's just jamming out. That's been our theme music for, goodness, I'm going to say 8 or 9 years. That's been our theme music, and it's good stuff. So yeah, I hear it once a week. While
we're still on the air, I have to apologize to Robin. I did see Robin at SHOT Show. I forgot to say that in the beginning, but she was going up an escalator. I was going down an escalator. We waved, and that was about as much as I got to see Robin.
And
so
I need to apologize to Carrie, who's a new member of our staff, but wasn't written down in show notes. That exit that I say when I say where is it? So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob. I didn't get Carrie's name written in there. So Carrie Ann Auclair, I'm sorry. If you are watching and are happen to be this late into it, sorry I didn't get your name up there. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the streams down now. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for contributing by commenting, and we'll see you next time.